You checked again, not because you expected it to be different, because you were hoping it would be, and it wasn't. The situation was exactly where you left it, unchanged, unmoved, indifferent to everything you brought to God about it. And you had brought everything, not a casual, half-present prayer you said out of habit. Everything. You prayed with the kind of belief that costs something, the kind where you let yourself actually expect something to happen, where you stopped protecting yourself from the possibility of disappointment and just believed. You said the words. You meant the words. You showed up the next morning and said them again. And the morning after that. For weeks. For months. And then one day you looked at the situation and it was exactly the same as the day you started praying. Not slightly different. Not moving in a direction you couldn't fully see yet. The same. And something in you went quiet in a way that's hard to describe. Not angry exactly. Not doubting exactly. Something more specific than both. The particular silence of someone who did everything they were supposed to do and watched it make no visible difference. And now you don't know what to do with the prayer. Not with God. Not with faith in the abstract. With the prayer. The specific, sustained, costly one that you gave everything to, and that gave nothing back that you can point to. Here's what the immobility does over time. It changes the relationship with prayer before you realize it's happening. You don't decide to pray differently. It just shifts. The next time you bring something to God, you notice you're holding back a little. Not the words. The expectation underneath the words. You still say the right things. But the part of you that fully believed last time, the part that actually thought something would move, that part is quieter now, more measured, more protected, and you tell yourself that's maturity, that you've learned to surrender the outcome, that you're trusting God's timing rather than expecting your own. And those things are true. But if you're honest, really honest, that's not the whole reason. The whole reason is that you don't want to do that again. You don't want to bring everything and watch nothing move. So you bring a little less. Just enough to stay in the relationship. Not enough to be devastated if the situation stays exactly the same again. And prayer becomes something you do more carefully, more guardedly, with less of you in it. And a relationship with God continues, but at a different depth than it was before the situation didn't move. And something in you knows the difference and doesn't know how to get back to the other side. Here's the conclusion the immobility produces that nobody names directly. If the situation didn't move and you prayed with everything you had, then the problem must be the faith you brought. Not enough of it. Not the right kind. Not sustained long enough or sincere enough or free enough from doubt to produce the result. That conclusion is almost never spoken out loud, but it shapes everything. It lives underneath the way you talk about prayer now, the way you qualify it, the way you hedge when someone asks if God answers prayer, the way you can't quite say yes with the same certainty you used to, because the evidence from your own experience says something more complicated. And the conclusion you drew from that evidence, quietly, without deciding to draw it, is that your faith wasn't sufficient, that something in you failed the requirement, that other people's prayers move things because something in them works the way it's supposed to, and something in yours didn't. That is not true. And it needs to be said plainly. The immobility of the situation was not a report on the quality of your faith. Faith is not the mechanism that moves circumstances. God is. And God is not a vending machine that produces results proportional to the faith deposited. He's a person with a perspective that exceeds what you can see. And sometimes his answer to a sustained, sincere, costly prayer is not the movement of the situation. It's the movement of something else, something harder to see, something that only becomes visible later. What if nothing moved on the outside because something was moving on the inside, not as a spiritual bypass, as a genuine question about what prayer actually does? Because here's what the months of sustained prayer produced. Even if the situation didn't change, you became someone who prays through immobility. That's not a small thing. Most people stop long before you stopped. Most people's faith folds at the first sign that the situation isn't responding. You kept going, through the weeks when nothing shifted, through the mornings when the same situation greeted the same prayer with the same silence. You kept bringing it. And the person who does that, who sustains belief through sustained immobility, is being built into something that the answered prayer could never have produced. A faith that doesn't depend on visible response. A trust that doesn't require confirmation to continue. A perseverance that has been tested at the exact point where most perseverance breaks. The situation may not have moved, but you did. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in the direction of something more durable than what you had when you started. And that movement, invisible, internal, happening in the most unglamorous conditions, may be exactly what the season was for. Think about someone learning a language they can't yet speak. Months of study with nothing visible to show for it. They can't hold a conversation yet. They can't read a newspaper yet. From the outside, and sometimes from the inside, it looks like nothing is happening. The situation hasn't changed. They're still not fluent. But inside, something is being built. Neural pathways are forming. Patterns are being laid down beneath the threshold of what's visible. And then one day, something shifts. A sentence comes out without effort. A word is understood without translating. The fluency that looked absent wasn't absent. It was underground, building in the silence between the attempts. That's what happens in sustained prayer through immobility. The faith is forming below the surface, in ways that don't show up on the scoreboard, in ways that only become visible when something requires you to speak the language you've been learning. And when that moment comes, and it will, you'll have fluency you didn't know you'd built, developed in the months when the situation stayed exactly the same, and the prayer looked like it wasn't working. And it was working, just not where you were looking. The disciples prayed for Peter in prison. Acts 12. Herod had already killed James. Peter was next, and the church gathered at Mary's house and prayed. Not a brief prayer. The text says they were praying earnestly. The Greek word implies intensity, sustained effort, the kind of prayer that costs something. And while they were praying, Peter was released. An angel appeared in the cell. The chains fell off. The gates opened, and Peter showed up at the door of the house where they were praying, and they didn't believe it was him. The people praying for Peter's release couldn't believe Peter had been released, which means they were praying without full certainty that anything would move. They were doing the thing, the sustained, earnest, costly thing, without the confidence that it was working. And it was working, not because their faith was perfect, not because they had resolved all their doubts about whether God would intervene, because they kept bringing it, even without certainty, even without visible movement, even in the middle of the kind of prayer that looks from the inside exactly like what you've been living. And the movement came, not on the timeline they chose, not in the way they expected. They literally thought the answer was a ghost. But it came, and the praying that looked like it wasn't working was the exact praying that preceded it. So here's what I want to say about the prayer that looked like it didn't work. It worked, not the way you measured it, not in the movement of the situation you were watching, but in the formation of the person who kept praying, in the faith that didn't fold when the situation stayed exactly the same, in the trust that outlasted the visible confirmation, in the perseverance that got built in the months of bringing something to God that God hadn't visibly moved yet. That person, the one who prayed with everything and watched nothing move and kept praying anyway, is not someone whose faith failed. That person is someone whose faith got proven at the hardest possible test, the one where the feedback loop broke, where the situation stopped confirming whether the prayer was landing, and you kept going without the confirmation. That's not ordinary. That's the rarest kind of faith there is. And the situation, whatever it is, wherever it is right now, is still in God's hands. Not because your prayer forced it there, because it never left. And the movement you haven't seen yet is not evidence that nothing is happening. It's evidence that what's happening hasn't finished yet. And you are someone who knows how to wait for what hasn't finished, because you've been doing it every day that you came back to the same prayer, in the same situation, with the same belief that something was possible. That belief was never wrong. It was just early. Before you go, type these words in the comments. The prayer was not wasted, not as a declaration that the situation moved, as a decision to believe that what you brought to God, every sustained, costly, unconfirmed prayer, landed, every single one, and is still working in ways you haven't seen yet.